Good riddance 2020. He will not be missed. But you will be eternally remembered. Seriously though, it's kind of impossible to forget this year. However drama-filled past years were with controversies happening everywhere, or how we used to think other years would be the end of times, 2020 really has just been the drama-filled end of times we've been anticipating, right? Well, it's hard to definitively answer that question. Back in January, I made a video where I posed the question if we were near the end of the world. And as 2020 has progressed and progressed, it seems that it has constantly gotten closer to that truth with certain events happening all over the world, even paralleling events prophesied in the Bible to link to the rapture. The world right now seems at its very lowest, but let's face it, other years have gone through much, much worse. The 1930s had the Great Depression, the 1940s had the deadliest war in history. And so why does the world seem like it's in such disarray right now? What's the difference? If I'm thinking about it honestly, I think the biggest difference between then and now is how connected we all are. The world has really transformed from a constantly warring state over boundaries to a semi-united hunk of cultures and continents who don't try to kill each other over confusion of boundaries. We have, in general, become more united. Information, most importantly, is transferred more quickly than ever. The amount of time between an initial thought in your head and sharing that thought to the general public has greatly decreased. And the world is extremely connected distance-wise, too. Cars and planes allow us to travel and reach any destination faster than before, and now it could only really take one day to get from one side of the world to the opposite. We're in an age of connectivity and unification between people of different cultures, locations, languages, ideas, etc. But could this have been part of our downfall this year? Social media generally has a tendency to focus upon the negatives. They can overblow middle-scale problems, which retracts needed attention from bigger problems. I actually think this could have contributed to the spread of COVID around the world, as certain people paid less attention to it than other problems which seemed more relevant at the time. Now, COVID is the major problem, and the main one the whole world is focusing on. But back in January, it wasn't, at least here in the US. Yet here we are, 9 months into quarantine. If someone had conceived the baby at the very start of quarantine, the baby would be born by now. Of course, COVID isn't the only conflict we've had this year. Another was the displays of racism that ran rampant throughout the US from some of our police. Many tragic deaths have occurred. Fires run rampant throughout California and Australia. Islands from the Philippines are destroyed by typhoons. The economic crash, really intense and passionate and sometimes terrible electoral campaign. And the other effects of COVID, people becoming jobless, businesses running out of business, just tons and tons of terrible and abhorrent events that just kind of happened all this year. As we console ourselves by saying, this year can't possibly get any worse, God continually proved us wrong by showing us more terrible stuff around each corner, which we could despair at, and once again ask, where is God in all this? And I'm not here to say that 2020 has been the best year ever. I myself would very much like to see its butt from the other side of the door in my weird analogy of years being closed and open doors which we enter and exit. However, I am here to say that there is one incredibly important thing that we have gained this year. Something most will probably not consider to be a blessing, but something that became apparent to me after reflection. The one thing we have gained, for the countless other things and people we have lost, is time, the most important resource to human beings that we'll never be able to purchase. Quarantine, the most obvious effect of COVID, has given us time to slow down, reflect, pause our normally busy lives, and just exist. I don't really know how other people feel about this extra time we have in our hand, but regardless of how people think of it, I think it is important for everyone. I don't know if the length of the break was appropriate. I do really believe time to relax, rest, and reflect is extremely important. I think science backs me up on that, but I'm too lazy to actually go and check. Sorry. I think for me, this time has really affected me. Out of any year in my life, quarantine, or 2020 in general, is most definitely the most my life has ever changed. I started exercising like Saitama, I transitioned to self-taught piano, I learned a ton at school, I learned a bunch of recipes to cook, I learned how to babysit, I picked up daily meditation and prayer routine and a rosary every night. The other thing that COVID has given us is an opportunity to change through that extra time we've been granted. and I think that's really important. Besides actual life-changing practices I've developed, I've also gained so much time to really discover my interests and sort out what I like and dislike. I recently finished watching and reading over 100 anime and manga, an achievement I will forever be proud of, but that's something I wouldn't have been able to accomplish without this extra time. And I think I really fell in love with the medium because of how it mishmashes and combines so many of my different interests into one medium, where I can find shows that showcase them all. And I've gotten more time to experience classic titles from other mediums I had already loved. Novels like Catcher in the Rye and The Pilgrimage, movies like Godfather and Monty Python, video games like Portal 2 and Osu. And I've really come to appreciate the art of storytelling as a passion more than just a passing interest. This year will be one to remember, reminisce, and reflect on. I encourage anyone and everyone watching this video to do the same. There's a lot of change that we should really think over, and there isn't a single aspect in my life, or the lives of others, probably, that hasn't been somehow affected, if not completely and utterly altered and reworked by COVID. I think we need to embrace that change. Change is a terrifying concept. Objects in the universe tend to want to stay how they are, as evident by Newton's law, and we don't want to change unless we're forced to. Coronavirus was that push. COVID-19 was that external force that really transforms us. It's up to us whether that change will be for the better or not, and that's why I think a time to reflect on this year is essential if any of us want to gain anything out of it. In my personal life, every aspect has changed. I've gone through a pseudo-metamorphosis, and I think this year has changed me into a completely different person. That's okay, I don't need to go back to where I was before. This year is a part of my life now, and I wouldn't be me without it. I hope all future thoughts and memories of this year aren't only full of hatred and dread and contempt. I'd like to embrace this year, which served the purpose of being the catalyst for change. So as we reflect on this year in 5-10 years' time, let's not dread over how horrible it was to be alone. Let's not focus on how much negativity has been around us. Let's not be entrapped in a mindset which prevents us from taking anything positive away from this year. Let's take it easy and remember the good change that has hopefully transformed our lives for the better, no matter what shape it may take. Happy New Year. Thank you so much.